The film begins with a scene set in 1990, where a young man impresses all the teachers at school after successfully completing a test. Albert Einstein once needed 3 days to finish the test, but this super genius youth managed to solve it in just a few hours. His older sibling mentions that he could enter college early, but the young man himself isn't sure about that yet. Then, an unpleasant incident occurs when he has a confrontation with a soldier who mocks his t-shirt. It turns out the character on the shirt is Cosmo, the main character of a once popular cartoon series. However, due to growing anti-robot sentiment across the country, the show was eventually taken off the air. Robots, referred to as bots, were first developed by Walt Disney in 1955 for their theme parks. Later, they began to be mass-produced and became the primary labor force across various regions. For years, they worked without issue until one day, the bots began to develop feelings and rebelled. They demanded rights and staged protests across the country, led by a bot named Mr. Peanut. Negotiations, filled with heated debate, failed, and a world war erupted between humans and bots. At that time, anyone found harboring a robot at home was considered a traitor. The war didn't go well for humanity. A sergeant named John appeared on television to explain that robots didn't need food, sleep, or even blink. For 2 years, humans kept fighting, but were consistently defeated. Then one day, the founder of a tech company called Eaton developed a device called the Neurocaster, which allowed humans to link their minds with drone bodies. Thanks to this technology, humans could finally fight back, and within 2 weeks, the tide of war shifted. This time, humanity emerged victorious. Colonel Bradbury was hailed as the war hero. Meanwhile, Mr. Peanut met with President Clinton and Eaton to sign a treaty, and over 6,000 robots were exiled to the exclusion zone in the desert. Time passed. Eaton released a civilian version of the Neurocaster for everyday use. This model allowed people to split their consciousness, enabling them to work and have fun at the same time. By 1994, Michelle, the sister of the genius youth, was trying to remove an ankle monitor, which angered her guardian Ted. He reminded her that although she had escaped from the orphanage once before, it wouldn't happen again. Michelle pointed to the pile of objects Ted had collected and said that taking items from the exclusion zone was illegal. The scene then shifts to a classroom where students are learning using the Neurocaster, but Michelle is the only one who refuses. She ends up facing the principal, who looks into her profile and assumes she lost her family in the war. Michelle denies it, explaining that her family died in a car accident, and she continues to refuse using the Neurocaster, especially after the principal reveals that the device includes a neurotherapy feature meant to erase emotional pain. Michelle then recalls memories with her younger brother, Christopher, the super genius youth. On that day, her brother had a panic attack, and Michelle tried to calm him down. That night, after returning home, Michelle had a dream about the car accident that claimed her family's lives. She remembered waking up in the hospital with a doctor watching over her, but strangely, she couldn't remember the doctor's face. In the present, Michelle suddenly wakes up after hearing a noise outside. She sees something moving in the yard, grabs a flashlight and goes out to check. Suddenly, she spots a reflection in a bottle, and a table falls over, startling her and making her run back inside. She warns Ted about a possible intruder, but he's too distracted by the Neurocaster to take it seriously. As the intruder manages to get in, Michelle rushes to hide, but it turns out the intruder is a robot. The robot effortlessly lifts the bed and stares directly at Michelle with a face that resembles Cosmo. Frightened, Michelle scrambles to a corner and tries to communicate. The robot uses hand gestures to indicate that it is looking for her. It can't speak, so it opens a panel in its head and prompts Michelle to do something. Unfortunately, the robot can only speak using a limited set of recorded audio clips. Then, Cosmo takes out a photo of Michelle and Christopher, revealing that it is actually Christopher. Naturally, Michelle doesn't believe it and snatches the photo, causing the robot to fall. The noise wakes Ted, who storms into Michelle's room and finds Cosmo. He immediately blames Michelle and starts yelling at her, leading to a heated argument. At that moment, Cosmo makes the same gesture that Christopher once used, and this makes Michelle start to believe the bot may actually have a connection to her brother. Suddenly, Cosmo pushes Ted. Furious, Ted grabs a golf club and tries to attack Cosmo, but it's not that easy. Ted ends up injured and calls 911. Realizing the situation, Michelle disables Ted, and together with Cosmo, she escapes using Ted's car, but not before removing the tracking device from her ankle. The next morning, the car breaks down in the middle of the road due to a flat tire. Michelle checks the trunk for a spare, only to find that it's damaged too. Frustrated, she starts asking Cosmo questions. Eventually, the bot explains that Christopher is still alive somewhere and is controlling him remotely. When Michelle asks how to find her brother, Cosmo points at a Sentry Company logo on a billboard. Using a can labeled Dr. Paper and hand gestures, Cosmo tries to convey something about a bespectacled doctor. Michelle suddenly recalls waking up in the hospital after the crash and finally remembers the face of Dr. Amherst, the doctor who told her Christopher had died in the hospital. Michelle then pulls out a map, and Cosmo points to a location in the middle of the exclusion zone. They realize the place is extremely dangerous and that they'll need a solid plan to get there. Michelle then remembers all the illegal items Ted used to collect, thinking there might be something among them that could help them. In the trunk of the car, they find a box with a sender's address from New Mexico. They decide to track down the sender, hoping he knows how to get into the exclusion zone. The two sneak aboard a cargo train for half the journey, then continue the rest on foot. By late afternoon, Michelle stops at a small store to buy food. As she steps out, she sees a truck approaching and quickly drags Cosmo into a nearby alley to hide. Coincidentally, the truck driver, named John, turns out to be the person they're looking for. He's in the middle of a deal selling vintage firearms to a man operating a drone. Suddenly, the buyer turns his gun on John, forcing John to speak a passphrase, "shock," which instantly causes the buyer to be electrocuted and collapse. It's not magic. John is working with a bot named Herman. While they're distracted dealing with the drone and the buyer's motorcycle, Michelle and Cosmo sneak into the back of the truck. Meanwhile, another drone operator named Bradbury finds Ted's abandoned car and appears to have a plan of his own. The next day, the truck arrives at an old mine near the exclusion zone. John and Herman start unloading their new supplies, unaware that Michelle and Cosmo are hiding inside one of the boxes. While John and Herman argue over a loose cable, Michelle tries to quietly slip away, but Cosmo accidentally activates a singing toy fish. John and Herman immediately realize something's off and close in on them. Michelle explains she just wants to find a way into the exclusion zone, but John thinks she's insane. Suddenly, the elevator activates. Someone is coming. They all scramble to hide. When the elevator descends, it reveals Bradbury. He announces that the area is now under the jurisdiction of a unit called the Robot Deactivation Task Force, and orders both John and Michelle to step forward with their hands up. John tries to trick him by pretending Michelle is his sister, but Bradbury immediately recognizes her and declares that she's under arrest. Herman attempts to tase Bradbury, but Bradbury quickly grabs John to use as a shield. He fires several shots, damaging some equipment, while the others scatter for cover. As Bradbury corners the robots, Michelle suddenly appears and strikes his drone arm with a fire extinguisher, but Bradbury easily overpowers her. As the room fills with smoke, Michelle claps her hands to shut off the lights and activate the singing toy fish again, creating a distraction. John uses the moment to launch an attack, but it has no effect on Bradbury. He retaliates and begins choking John. Trying to save John, Michelle and Cosmo surrender. After tossing John aside, Bradbury explains that Cosmo has been marked for deactivation. At that moment, Herman drops a crane arm on Bradbury, giving everyone a chance to jump onto a train to escape. In a comedic twist, John fumbles to find the right key, and because of the delay, Bradbury manages to shoot at the train, forcing them to fight once again. In the end, Michelle uses a bulldozer to finally and fully take Bradbury down. Seeing his home destroyed leaves John truly furious, and he blames Michelle for everything. But before the argument can escalate, they hear strange noises around them. It turns out to be a group of scavenger robots wandering around to collect spare parts and repair themselves. Some are even aggressive robots who obtain parts by destroying other bots. Seizing an opportunity, John heads to the garage, where he stores a van and a device Herman uses to enlarge himself. After a bit of a heated debate, Michelle finally convinces John to help find the bespectacled doctor, their potential ticket out of the exclusion zone. Soon after, Michelle, Cosmo, and John are seen riding in the van driven by Herman. Along the way, they witness a shocking scene, hundreds of destroyed bots scattered everywhere. During the journey, John tells the story of how he met Herman. During the war, John's team lost a battle and was surrounded by enemy bots. They were supposed to be executed, but Herman noticed John crying and chose to save him. A few days later, a Sentry drone found them. Despite John's efforts to explain that Herman was different, the drone wouldn't listen, and the two were forced to go into hiding to avoid being killed. Meanwhile, Ethan is shown using a neurocaster to relive memories of his mother, but the system isn't stable, and he's forced to shut it down. Frustrated, he lashes out at the scientists, demanding an explanation for the malfunction. They eventually confess that Christopher has escaped, and if he isn't found by Friday, the entire company could collapse. In desperation, Ethan contacts Bradbury in a virtual space. He knows Cosmo is on Bradbury's target list and offers a deal. Instead of turning Cosmo over to the authorities, Ethan wants Bradbury to bring him directly to the company. At the same time, back in the mine, Bradbury's drone suddenly reactivates. Back to Michelle and John, now traveling through the desert, they discuss the possibility of entering an abandoned mall. Suddenly, a robot spots them and hurls a refrigerator in their direction. Herman tries to escape, but the barrage continues relentlessly until he collapses. In an instant, they're surrounded by a group of bots, who then bring them into the mall. Inside, they discover a hidden robot community, from entertainer bots and household helpers to massive mechanical giants. Soon after, Mr. Peanut appears. He apologizes for capturing them and explains that the robots thought Michelle's group were dangerous scavengers. When Michelle explains their situation, Peanut reveals that Dr. Emmers once visited the place, but he drove the doctor away, so he doesn't know where the man is now. Michelle wants to press on with the search immediately, but John warns her how dangerous it is to go out at night, urging her to wait until morning. Alone, Michelle recalls her last Christmas with Christopher and how rarely they'd seen each other since he started college. The memory brings her to tears, and Cosmo comforts her by playing the cartoon they used to watch together. Not long after, a few robots join in to watch, and this small moment seems to genuinely touch Peanut. Sometime later, a mail delivery robot arrives with a postcard for Christopher, which Cosmo receives. On the card is an address along with a message saying that Emmers is waiting for him. The address is located in scavenger territory, so they know they can't go without a solid plan. Hearing this, Peanut introduces them to a training robot. The robot constantly malfunctions while trying to explain how to fight the scavengers. At first, John sees the robot as a burden, but he's quickly silenced when he witnesses the incredible speed of the balls it fires during training. The next morning, Bradbury arrives at the exclusion zone and watches them all from a distance. Seeing that Michelle's group is leaving in Peanut's vehicle, he begins to follow. The group spends the entire day on the road, and by nightfall they finally arrive at an abandoned amusement park, the location shown on the postcard. Michelle spots a light coming from one of the rides and assumes someone must be inside, but suddenly the head of a clown bot lights up, followed by several creepy bots around them powering on. Michelle and her friends quickly prepare to fight off any bots that come close. Peanut tries to communicate, but the scavenger bots can only growl. The door to the building turns out to be fake, and with the scavenger bots closing in, Michelle's group doesn't know what to do. Then, out of nowhere, music starts playing. Lights flash and bursts of fire shoot up, scaring the scavenger bots away. Suddenly, the floor opens beneath Michelle's group, and they fall into a hidden tunnel that leads them inside the building. Inside, they finally meet Dr. Emmers, who seems happy to see the postcard in Cosmo's hand. But Michelle wastes no time and demands answers about Christopher. Emmers reveals that Christopher is at Sentry's lab in Seattle. After the accident, Christopher underwent a series of routine tests, and the monitoring machine at the hospital discovered something unique about him. Christopher turned out to be the person they needed to win the war. So Emmers allowed Sentry to take him, and lied to Michelle by saying that Christopher had died. Emas blames the computer and plays a video recording of the experiment. In the video, Christopher appears to be in a coma, and the doctors assumed he would remain that way indefinitely. So they connected him to the Neurocaster network to keep him functioning. Emas admits he's not proud of what happened, but he believes it was a necessary decision to save the world. Besides, if they hadn't done it, Christopher would have died in the hospital. 13 months after the experiment began, Christopher finally woke up. Emas wanted to sever the connection, but Ethan refused, even threatening to kill Emas if he tried. Out of fear, Emas decided to run away, but before fleeing, he secretly established a small connection between Christopher and the outside network. He also left the mall's location, hoping Christopher would find a new family among the robots. Angry, Michelle tells him that Christopher already had a family, and John, without hesitation, attacks Emas. Suddenly, Bradbury shows up outside and breaks in, but once inside, he finds the room empty. The lights go out and Peanut ambushes him from behind, shoving him into an electrical grid. The shock causes Bradbury's drone to drop its weapon, but unfortunately, it's not enough. Bradbury quickly gets back up and counterattacks, easily defeating Peanut. Meanwhile, Michelle's group tries to sneak out, but is stopped when they hear noises. It turns out to be several soldier drones arriving and quickly surrounding them. The training bot immediately fires high-powered balls, even managing to shatter a few of the drone screens. From a distance, Ethan watches everything unfold and orders his troops to capture Cosmo, even if it means killing others. As more soldiers attempt to apprehend them, Emas opens fire and directs them to an escape route. Meanwhile, John and the other robots continue to fight with whatever weapons they can find. Downstairs, Bradbury removes Peanut's hat, saying the bot has broken their agreement, and now his family must suffer the consequences. Emas tells Michelle and the others to run while he goes out to face Bradbury. Bradbury hesitates to kill a human, so Ethan takes control of one of the drones and uses it to eliminate Emas. The doctor falls into debris impaled by a metal rod, which makes Bradbury begin to question his morality. Michelle and Cosmo try to escape, but once again they're surrounded by soldiers. One grabs Michelle, while others seize Cosmo and drag the bot away. Suddenly, Bradbury shoots the drone holding Michelle and tells her to go home and end the chaos. The next day, Michelle's group returns to the mall only to find the place in ruins. Most of the robots have been destroyed. Meanwhile, Cosmo is taken to the center lab, where he is finally reunited with Christopher's body as Ethan links them to the system. Bradbury comes to realize he's been deceived. Cosmo isn't just a robot, and he's furious to learn he was sent to hunt a child all along. Ethan reminds him that this child is the key to winning the war and says that sacrifices must be made for the progress of a species. The scene shifts back to the mall, where John encourages Michelle not to give up and promises to help her. Michelle then checks Emas's computer, which had been transferred into a robot and escaped with them earlier. From it, Michelle finds the exit code from the exclusion zone and the location of the lab in Seattle. The bot also explains that if Christopher's connection is severed, the entire Neurocaster system and company would collapse. At that moment, Peanut returns, revealing that he rejected war by signing a peace treaty. But Michelle argues that the attack on the mall means that treaty has already been broken. Using a few abandoned trucks, John, Michelle, and the surviving robots leave the desert and head towards Seattle. Herman even finds a new, bigger giant suit, which he uses to throw cars at the center lab, drawing the enemy into battle. Ethan, upon hearing the report, immediately deploys his full army. Herman and John charge toward the lab, creating a distraction so Michelle and the computer bot can sneak inside the building. John shoots incoming drones while Herman smashes them with his massive arms. Eventually, one of the enemy drones self-destructs, disabling the giant suit, but the duo refuses to give up. Herman dons a smaller suit to protect John, and they continue fighting. With the battle moving far enough away, other robots join the fight, all of it being watched by Bradbury through a camera. Seeing his troops struggle, the furious Ethan enters a control room and dons a special Neurocaster, allowing him to control the strongest drone. He descends onto the battlefield and effortlessly destroys most of the robots. In the main lab, the computer bot pretends to be a mad robot to scare off the scientists. Once the coast is clear, Michelle confirms that her brother is still alive, but to speak with Christopher, she needs to wear the neurocaster. At the same time, Bradbury arrives on the battlefield to confront Peanut, but instead of fighting, Bradbury reveals that he has come to understand that humans are no more humane than robots. He then disconnects his own neurocaster after giving Peanut Eaton's location. While wearing the neurocaster, Michelle finds herself inside a memory of her last Christmas with Christopher. She tells him she wants to save him, but Christopher explains that his body is too weak. If he's disconnected from the system, he'll die. However, he doesn't want to live like this forever either, and asks Michelle to end it. Meanwhile, Eaton grows more vicious with his drone, eventually destroying Herman's last suit. The small Herman is also severely damaged. As John rushes to help, it's already too late. At that moment, Peanut finds Eaton. Eaton claims he wants to renegotiate the peace treaty. Back inside the neurocaster, Michelle refuses to disconnect her brother, not wanting to lose him again. But Christopher insists, saying he's felt nothing for years and that there's nothing left to save in him. He tells Michelle she can still help others who need her. After many emotional moments and tears, Michelle finally says goodbye and returns to the real world to sever Christopher's connection, which instantly shuts down the entire neurocaster network, and the robots celebrate their victory. John mourns Herman's shutdown, but suddenly Herman's head opens to reveal a mini version of himself, still functioning inside. All across the world, chaos erupts as every neurocaster shuts down simultaneously. The news begins to cover Sentry's human experimentation, and Eaton is finally arrested. People also begin to demand the abolition of the exclusion zone. The film ends with a scene in the middle of the desert. John and the robots help Michelle record a video. In the video, Michelle urges everyone to leave behind the neurocaster and return to enjoying the real world, just like they used to, with their loved ones. Meanwhile, Cosmo has been thrown into the trash, but suddenly, his head begins to move. And that's it for the story series of this film. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to support this channel by subscribe, like and share. See you in the next video. Goodbye.